Good morning, everyone. Let everyone get settled here. Looking forward to chatting today. Awesome to see some familiar faces as well as new names and faces here. Just while we wait for everyone to file in, if you would pop in the chat box and share where you're joining us from and what the weather is like today, we can consider that our little icebreaker for this morning. If you don't know me, I am Jennifer Wilson. I'm the communications coordinator for the private well class. And I love doing these breakout sessions with Zoom. And so I'm looking forward to today. Marty's in Wisconsin, where it's overcast and rainy. We have similar weather here in Illinois. Arkansas, raining too. Frida, Minnesota, also rainy, overcast in Indiana. Rain in Iowa. Okay, apparently we all need to go to Massachusetts where it's 60 degrees and sunny. Lots of Minnesota, Missouri rain. Looks like the whole Midwest is just, getting all the rain. It still thinks it's spring. When is summer going to arrive? Alrighty. Hey, Steve, our conference moderator has just joined us. Good to see you here this morning.
Yeah, sorry.
It's all right. We're just
issues. I'm not very smart. That's the problem. And it seems to happen a lot to me. So.
All righty. So I have a couple more folks joining us here. Want to make sure we're all here for the instructions. Steve, what you miss is that we've determined that the entire Midwest is rainy and cloudy and dreary today. But that means we get to enjoy being online in our cozy offices. So.
Sure. It means we likely won't have softball practice for my daughter tonight, which isn't a bad thing since it's 4 nights a week.
Oh, rainy in Virginia too. All righty. We've determined that the Northeast is probably the most pleasant place right now, of course, other than, maybe California. Okay, so let's jump in. I'm gonna move that one there. Okay, so if you participated in this last year, you kind of know how this is going to run, but I wanted to let you know this is a 2-hour interactive session. I want you to feel encouraged and invited to feel comfortable turning your cameras on, turning your audio on, and chatting with fellow participants. Because I'm going to be breaking you into small groups of 4 to 5 individuals, and we're going to tackle 4 different questions. And each time I'm going to recycle the groups and help you meet even more of your fellow conference participants. So we did this last year. It turned out really well. What we'll do is we'll go through the first 2 questions, have a brief kind of regroup recap where we start sharing some of our ideas just to get your brain churning. And then we'll do 2 more questions and then have a longer discussion session at the end. And so I'm really asking you to think about what you're hearing from others and keep an open mind to their ideas, share freely of your ideas. The individual breakout room conversations are not being recorded. The only parts we'll record are the full group conversation here, so you can feel free to be frank. And then also just be really paying attention to ideas that you want to take away, that you want to try, insights that you didn't think about it, new perspectives, because we all just want to use this time together in the Flash Mastermind as well as this whole conference to advance our collective efforts, because we're really all here with a similar goal of serving private well owners and helping make sure they have water that is safe to drink and they know how to properly care and maintain their well. So our questions for today are definitely contextual for the times we are living in. Number 1, how did the pandemic impact your private well program or efforts? We know this has been an ongoing conversation in the conference this week and will continue today and tomorrow. What have you learned about risk communication over the past 2 years? We know that's a topic that often can feel frustrating. It's difficult. It's a difficult skill to learn, but I think we've all learned a little bit more than we ever had before in the past 2 years, especially since I know so many of you had to pivot your efforts from doing private well outreach and education to COVID-19 responses. Number 3, what are the biggest challenges in risk communication about private well topics? So now that we've kind of have a context for where we are, what are the big challenges that are out there? What are the challenges you've experienced in the past, ones you're experiencing now, or you think you might experience in the future? And how can we start working through those? And then we'll end on this question of what can we do better as we reboot programs, all come together again around this shared mission, and what can we take from all the experiences we've had in the past 2 years and before and do things even better. So I think this is going to be a really great conversation. If you missed last year's, I'd love to invite you to go check out the recording of that one, because it was a completely different conversation with different questions, and I think it's just really useful to be able to have this time, particularly if we're not all in the same room together. These are often the conversations we're having in small groups anyway, so let's have them here in this particular format. So what I would suggest you do when I put you into breakout rooms is just do a little quick round of introductions. Try not to spend too much time on that. I'm going to have, you'll have 12 minutes for each question. And as you're discussing, you might want to note points of agreement and disagreement. Where's everyone on the same page, or where do we differ in our opinions, perspectives, experiences? And then if you want, someone could be in charge of using the whiteboard feature inside the breakout room to take notes. So you can choose a secretary, whatever works for your group. It's going to be different for everyone. But I just want to encourage you to work collaboratively to try to tackle the question and figure out what takeaways you want to bring back to the full group session. Okay, before I move you into breakout rooms, do we have any questions? You can just unmute yourself and ask, or raise your hand virtually, ask in the chat box. Any of those ways are okay. Steve, do you have anything you want to add before we jump in?
No, I'm looking forward to meet some folks I don't know, and I certainly see folks I do know in here. It's good to see you. So looking forward to a good conversation.
Yep. Okay. So I have got the rooms created. I'm going to send you off. And so as a reminder, that first question is, how did the pandemic impact your program? So I'm sure there's going to be a lot of things to share on this. Okay, I'm going to send you off. You're going to have a little pop-up. You may have to click a button to enter the room.
That was quick. Was that really 12 minutes?
That was 10 minutes.
Okay.
I wanted to ask, how do we want 15 minutes next time? Would that be better?
I'd say so.
More time. Okay. Sometimes we could do, let's do 16.
I mean, because the introductions, we start, you get talking about stuff and.
Sure.
Yeah. Frida didn't get to share how she was reassigned for 2.5 years. So yeah.
Okay. Well, let's just continue with the same group, and then we'll reshuffle after this question. What have you learned about risk communication over the past 2 years? So continue your conversations, and then we'll shuffle up so you can meet some new people the next time around. And this one will go for 16 minutes, just so we balance it out a bit.
Thank you.
All righty. Was that more time this time? Was that good? See at least one nod, 2 nods, thumbs up. Perfect. Okay. Welcome back all. We've had more folks join us since we first got started, so welcome to everyone. I'm going to recreate. Actually, what we're going to do now is I want to hear just some initial reactions. What are the top takeaways, the things that stood out the most for you in your conversations? So you can use the raise hand feature. If you're not able to do that, you can just physically flag me down, or you can use the chat box, but the raise hand feature does work the best. It's under reactions if you're not sure where it is. Danielle.
Hi. Yeah. The thing I noticed was how different each county is, or each state is.
Okay, go ahead, Dan. You'll go and then we'll have Danielle go. She raised her hand, so, but go ahead.
So yeah, just the different programs that are in the different states and how it must be difficult for contractors that work in different states to be able to take all that in and be able to function with the different laws and the different regulations in the different states, and how it makes it more confusing, I think, for people that live near state lines and that type of thing. So that was my takeaway. Thanks.
For sure. Yeah, thank you. All right, Danielle.
Yeah, trying to figure out how to, I haven't used the hand raise thing in so long. I'm like, wait, how do I lower it? So what I thought was interesting in our group is we talked about accessing the records, like the well drill records, any kind of well record, how that was a challenge, at least, especially some people, like one of the members of our group said that they had lost them in a fire in their town, like they just lost the records. And I mentioned that for me, one of my biggest challenges getting well records was that there were only 2 people on the health board that served a huge community. For whatever reason, they were down to 2 people. So only 1 admin, and it took 2 months to pull the records because they said, you can't come into the building. So I've said, well, I could come help. And they said, not with COVID, we don't want anyone in the building. Eventually they pulled everything from me and left them in a big room with a huge bottle of sanitizer and gave me a whole bunch of perimeters to photocopy the data. But what my town, my hometown did, and a few other towns, is they had, during COVID, when students would be in class, they actually had taken home a stack of stuff to scan at home and use that as a class time for internships. That was before COVID and during it. So I told a few towns to think about that, like hire someone remotely, drop off a stack of stuff. I mean, like bring a trailer if you have to, bring like a mountain of paperwork, let them scan it in on their own time and save everything. And that way you have a digital copy and then people can access it from wherever remote location. They didn't even think of that because they just have this mountain of old data. I said, you want to preserve that in case of, flood, fire, natural disaster or whatnot. You don't want to lose it. I mean, save it, but you want another copy of it. So kind of threw that idea out there, especially with people working remotely. If they have the capabilities, let them work from home and scan all those well records. And they're hard to find. You're digging through a mountain. Sometimes the stack is this big and there's one little sheet and it's not always there. That was kind of a bummer, but we tried. That's all I had to say.
No, that's a great perspective. I think this issue of digitizing records, keeping records safe from possible destruction is an ongoing conversation, probably one of the most important ones because we rely on that data to communicate, to make decisions, to help others. So thanks. Cindy.
Our group was pretty diverse, and when it came to working through COVID, we had a variety. With the health department, of course, they still had services they had to provide with limitations. Although some of us in RCAP had restrictions. So trying to deal with all of those, converting to virtual, engaging folks. And then we had Jeffrey from a nonprofit that they utilized COVID in a very positive manner. They regrouped and they developed a plan as to how to move forward after COVID. Used the time for recruiting retirees from the water field, which is being building each day, as we know that we're losing a lot of professionals. So they utilize that, and they have a plan and have started working in that effort. And they worked on their messaging to improve, moving from, as he said, geologists suck at risk communication, so do engineers, and so do hydrogeologists, but they use the model of the public health and have rebranded their program. And I think that's, a lot of us have had to look at how we conduct our communication from what was shared. But it was very interesting, the diversity within our group and how each of us had our own struggles, and each state and community or region had to deal differently. So that was very interesting.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that anecdote. Lauren.
So kind of focusing more on the risk question, something that kind of seemed like a bit of a consistent thing for our group was the fact that you're trying to talk to these homeowners and they're worried about what's going to happen with you guys coming, whether it was the health department or for my organization that I run, we consist of a lot of water suppliers, and we're just there trying to sample and just get a better understanding of groundwater in the region and help educate them as a private well owner. And they think we're going to be forcing them onto water supply and taking their well away, or with the health department, how will impact their property taxes and things like that, or being able to sell their property. And so that stigma, I guess, coming from who you are rather than a nonprofit who is, I guess, a more welcoming site on your doorstep.
Yeah, that's definitely an ongoing challenge in trying to gain trust with the well owners you're trying to serve. Thanks, Lauren. Jesse?
I had to figure out how to unmute myself there. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Our group discussed how all the environmental health professionals, health departments, and other groups were pulled away to do COVID-19 testing and data entry and that type of thing. And it really slowed or stopped a lot of programs overall because they were pulled away to do things that weren't their job. In my own case, I do a lot of trainings and things like that. And when you call on your partners and your partners say, well, I no longer can do private wells this year, I'm doing data entry for COVID-19 all year. It really did put kind of a hamper on a lot of programs, especially in our region. So that was my takeaway.
Yeah, I think that happened a lot. Steve?
Yeah, we had the same thing. Also, Frida from Minnesota Department of Health mentioned a lot of retirements and people leaving the health field. And so now they're short-staffed still and don't have the same capacity they had before, and they're trying to refill that. That's on the bad side. And I also mentioned on our side, we run an online program, and we do webinars every month that offer CEs for environmental health professionals. And we've seen an uptick in the number of people that participate because of that. So folks are getting their CEs online, and it's really actually helped our program in that respect. Yeah, I think that's it.
Thanks, Steve. All right, let's recycle for another round here of 2 questions. So first one, we'll do another 16 minutes. What are the biggest challenges in risk communication about private well topics? So you'll meet some new friends, and we'll be able to dive deeper into the challenges you're facing and maybe share even some solutions or ways that you've moved past those challenges. So let's slightly smaller rooms this time, so you can really dig into some details. Let's see here, looks good. Okay, have fun in the next conversation. I hope you share a lot of insights. Alrighty, hopefully another good round of conversations, hopefully some solutions and ideas shared, exchanged between each other. We'll do one last round of conversations here, and I am going to recycle the groups again so you can meet more of your fellow participants. Just the simple recognition of this is somebody else who's a colleague in this whole world is so helpful, particularly as we go about our business, attending future events, future conferences, things like that, to know that somebody else is there to share a conversation and to continue tackling these challenges. So our final question, what can we do better as we reboot private well program? So taking everything that we've learned, this additional knowledge, for better or worse, from the past 2 years, and adding that to our programs moving forward. Steve, something you want to say?
Yeah, are we going to talk about the third question now?
No, we're not.
Oh, we're going to do it at the end?
After, yeah.
Okay.
All right. So we've got the groups recreated, and I will send you off for that one last 16-minute discussion, and then we'll come all back together and chat about your insights and takeaways, and Steve will help moderate that conversation as well. All righty, welcome back, everyone. Now the real fun begins. I can't wait to hear what some of your takeaways were. Maybe let's start with kind of just how the pandemic impacted your program and how we're going to move forward from that. Where are you at now? Where have you heard others are at now? Curious to hear what you discussed in the first conversation. Steve, you're muted.
When we all came back together in the middle, we discussed the first two questions already, I believe.
We're going to discuss all 4 questions together.
Oh,
We're just trying to kind of
My bad. Sorry.
grease the wheels a little bit to get the conversation flowing. I just want to give some more context, particularly those who maybe joined later.
Good point.
Hi, this Mary. I'm sorry my battery went dead.
No problem, Mary.
Well, I guess
I can take a stab at least what's going on in Indiana and what we're trying to do to build back up. We lost a lot of key players to the health department. You know, our health departments were involved heavily in the private well programs pre-pandemic, and then obviously we lost a lot of those to other duties and retirement and everything else that's been going on, like we've heard echo around from some of the other states and communities. So as part of our efforts to try and get back to it, we're reaching out across to other partners and other agencies and other groups out there that are also interested in maybe clean water or groundwater or some other aspect that feeds very well into the private well program, trying to get support and champions to promote clean water for all across all agencies and all districts as an effort. So yeah, that's what we're doing here in Indiana.
No, I think that's a really smart idea to broaden your network. So those relationships are always important, but to make sure that if, particularly for the health department folks who maybe have been tasked elsewhere or still trying to regroup themselves, developing those relationships with a broader array of partners can be really helpful. It's all going the same direction, and we're all trying to help each other out. Thanks, Ginger.
Well, one thing that my group, not here group, dealt with was the fact that a lot of the state labs shut down, obviously during COVID, but then the entire protocol process, like they were closed a lot longer than I think a lot of other states, at least here in Michigan, because they were trying to establish how they're gonna let people come in with samples to do it if you're not like an official list person. And so we were dealing with that. And so it was a lot of, since that issue, finding external partners to be able to work with, whether it was a private lab from one of our water suppliers or even going outside of state to get some of the sampling done for the private homeowners that we were reaching out to.
Yeah, I think all the ways we've had to be clever and innovative, whether it's in programming or just in logistics, that can only serve us well into the future. Because something else weird might happen, and if you have those new relationships, you can get something done. Thanks. Other connections between the outcomes, the fallout, the experience of the past 2 years, and how you're looking forward to the future and rebooting your program, or rebooting someone else's program, depending on where you sit.
Well, our actual group conversation got hijacked by Jesse's groundwater model background. And he was telling us all about how he adapted to presenting the groundwater model virtually, and had some great tips, because my group actually has one of those as well. And so tips for being able to show it virtually and ways to talk between the model and PowerPoints and things like that. So it was actually a really helpful conversation.
Oh,
Those
that's
models
really
are
cool.
awesome. Yeah, we have 2 of them. They're really useful, especially state fair, things like that. Yeah.
We were speaking about how I've bought a secondary camera that I can point at the model in my office. And so I can switch between, like if we're doing a Zoom meeting like this, I can switch between my presentation slides and the camera that's pointing at the model and run dye through the model remotely. And it's helped our other staff as well, when they're doing water operator trainings, if they're doing things like source water protection trainings and that type of thing, they'll remote me into the training. I could spend about an hour with the camera pointed at the model during their training, talking about source water protection, contamination movement, that type of thing, along with the model. So yeah, I ate up our entire group time discussing my model, but yeah,
It was
a lot.
worth it. Completely
model.
worth it.
Yeah. I highly recommend, if you do any education and outreach, to have one of those. They're pretty useful. So
Yeah, Steve, it seems like we could do a whole, like a webinar training workshop type thing just on using the model and using, and then also sharing additional tips on using it virtually. So that'd be interesting.
yeah, we can hire Jesse to come in, and probably all recorded, right?
Well, wait a minute. That sounds like work. Yeah, I don't mind. We could remote in. It's not a problem. And
Oh, sure.
so I'm sure anybody that's in my region, any of our partners that we already work with or anything, it's always an option. Midwest Systems Program's here to help out and do those trainings and partner up with people. So we have the model, and I can remote into your trainings or show up and do them. So there you go.
Very cool. What about this topic of risk communication? What did you discuss there? We've all, quantifying risk has always been a challenge, and communicating effectively about it. Sometimes in the absence of regulations can help make that easier, but when there are not regulations, it could become even harder. And then we've learned how to communicate risk in an ever ongoing changing environment of knowledge when something is brand new, which is, a bigger challenge, even on top of everything else we already had. So what did you discuss there?
Well, I'll go if nobody else wants to. What we discussed were really how difficult it is, because it's just one of many risks. And it's not about just even convincing the well owner or reaching the well owner. It's about the well owner can only go so far. And if you really want to affect change, you need to reach folks like we talked about, legislators and realtors and labs, and affect change in that way. I know, and I can't remember which breakout now, but we talked about Massachusetts and their efforts currently through the Health Foundation of Central Massachusetts. They're trying to get legislation passed, because right now there are over 350 boards of health that each can set their own rules. And so there's not equal protection for all Massachusetts residents. In one health district area, you may have folks who can actually condemn your well if there's something wrong. And in others, there are no rules whatsoever. And so it really is not, it should be equal health protection under the law, in my view of the world. And so that's one issue. The other is that, what was the other thing that was brought up? Just as far as outreach, I'm trying to think of how we worded this. Boy, who was in there? I'll come back. Somebody else go.
No problem. Who wants to jump in next?
I say the people from Minnesota, they had great information on the studies that they've done in the past, and possibly studies that they might do in the future on pushing out information. Frida?
Yeah,
Or
go
there
ahead,
we go,
Frida.
Tanny.
No, I
You
was
go
just
for
gonna,
it, Tanny.
okay, and then you can fill in because you're the one that really is doing all the work on this. I just raised the issue of risk communication around arsenic, and that it's very challenging, and there's lots of reasons that we know from psychology and sociology that make it more challenging. So the value for public drinking water used to be 50 and it's been reduced to 10. So people think, oh, 10's not anything to worry about, because it used to be 50. It's naturally occurring, so people don't get all outraged about naturally occurring contaminants. And then the public drinking water standard is 10, but we know that that's modified to take into consideration technology, the cost for treatment, and cost for testing, and arsenic's very expensive. But if it was a purely health-based value, it would probably be closer to the detection limit. And then in our water resource management world, everyone's all about nitrate because of the ecological challenges and what it does to the ecosystem and the Gulf and so on and so forth. And arsenic just doesn't really fit into the Clean Water Act. It doesn't fit into the conservation model. So arsenic is a gap in our ability to protect private well users. And Frida can tell you more because she did the survey on it and what we learned about better ways to communicate through our survey.
Thanks, Tanny. Frida, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
I'm not sure that I do at this point, but if people have specific questions, I'm always happy to respond to those questions. Thanks for that information, Tanny.
So how many people did you survey?
Sure. Okay. Now you're going to make me like reach back in my brain a little bit.
That's all good. That's all good.
I think we had about 100 or not 100, excuse me, 800 survey participants. So we had sent out a survey to, and Emily, feel free if you recall this off the top of your head, at least a couple thousand private well owners in Minnesota that we know when their well was first constructed, that they had an arsenic concentration above the public drinking water standard of 10 parts per billion. And so then we asked a series of questions about, you were notified that there was a high level of arsenic. Did you do anything to reduce that level? If so, what did you do? If you didn't, why not? What would persuade you to test your water? Have you tested? And I think just some of like the key takeaways that we learned through that we're still building a lot of our outreach and education and planning on, are that of those respondents, even though they knew they had high levels of arsenic, about 1 out of 3 of them, it was 34%, didn't take any form of action to reduce their exposure to arsenic. And it was a combination of they weren't sure what to do, they didn't really, cost was a concern for some, and then the third was they planned to do something, they just hadn't done anything yet. And then the testing piece too, less than 20% had tested their well water in the last couple of years for anything. And then I'm drawing a blank. There's like a third takeaway. Oh, the people or the things that would prompt them to test, or the messengers that would prompt them to test, tended to be if they noticed something that would like seemed off with their water, was the most common. Otherwise, it was if their physician or some medical professional recommended they test, or a local leader in their community recommended they test, or their neighbor said something about it. That was going to be the most likely thing to get them to test. But I'm happy to share that information with anyone. We have kind of a write-up of the survey responses, and we're hoping this year or in the next couple of years, to do a follow-up assessment and learn a little bit more, see if there's any changes out there. Okay, that was a bit rambly. Thank you all.
No, great. No, thanks for sharing.
That's awesome. It's fascinating.
800 is a lot.
Yeah.
The Barb Lukanen thing from before, that was probably the biggest one I've heard of, but yours is definitely very valuable because it's so many people. I remembered the other thing, by the way, it needs to be their decision. So we have people who look at risk differently. They may smoke, but they don't want to have anybody tell them to wear a seatbelt. All those things. And so our challenge, in my opinion, is to convince people that it's in their best interest, so that they want to test their well and they want to know what's in it, because they do look at that risk like they do wearing a seatbelt. Or, I mentioned before in our breakout, it's like why people don't go to the dentist or the doctor. A lot of times people put that off, and they put it off because either they don't want to know, they're worried it's going to cost them a lot of money or whatever. But if it's, if that was their kid, they would definitely go do it. And so how do you get to this? Tanny mentioned the psychology of all this. It's totally that. How do we, it's that side of things, convincing people that they need to do it. And it's also that well owners come from every demographic. I mean, they do. They're urban, rural, wealthy, poor, educated, uneducated. They're just anyone can be a private well owner. And so how do you reach that audience? You can't target a specific population like you do for a lot of other things. And so there's just a lot of challenges. That's what we ended up with, I think.
Frida, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you for that, Stephen. Thank you, Jennifer. I think building off of that idea that we know that private well users, I mean, are coming across from a bunch of different demographics. And I guess that is something I would love to see us kind of take as a lesson learned from COVID, or that we were reminded of during COVID. I know at least in Minnesota, we invested a lot of time and resources and thought process during COVID response to ensure that we had messengers that were representative of all sorts of demographics, cultural communities, different age groups, faith groups, to ensure that people were getting messages. Well, one, that people were getting messages about COVID, and then two, that they were getting messages from people that they trusted in their community, and they knew where they could ask questions, things like that. And that would be a really great model for us to try to integrate into how we work with private well users too, because again, going back to your point, Steve, it's not just like this specific demographic and we know all private well users get information from this source. It doesn't work that way. So how can we equip messengers across communities, across wherever private well users may be? How do we equip messengers to kind of help bring information to private well users, bring questions back to experts, etc.?
Yeah, that's so valuable to think about it in that way, and how we can provide a model that can be scaled to the local areas, and teach and help others learn how to do that and to build those relationships. If you're the one wearing the hat, the official hat, how can you then build those relationships with the messengers? I think it's a skill and something that we can all benefit from. Lauren?
Can I go ahead of you just to finish this thought?
Go
Sure.
for it.
Thank you. So there is a model. Pennsylvania Extension has the I can't think of the title of it now, where they basically train people to be the local. Oh boy, what's the name of the program?
Master Well Owner Network.
Thank you. They create master well owners, like master gardeners in Extension. They do master well owners, and they've had a program for over 20 years where they bring people in for a day or two. Now it's done virtually, where they get local people to agree to be the first contact for well owners in their local area. We are looking at trying to start. I actually asked Brian before he retired if he minded if we went down that road. We're going to try to get a grant to actually work in a few counties that are underserved, and develop local folks who can be the first source of information and outreach for well owners. And it's really a great program. If you haven't heard of it, it's Pennsylvania Extension. They've trained over 40,000 people, I think, or they've reached over 40,000 well owners with the, several thousand master well owners that they've trained. And it's, it's a few days, so it's not extensive. They're not experts, but they can take on all the basics and provide the right resources, and at least help people understand that what the risks are and why they need to care. Thanks, Lauren. Sorry.
Oh, you're good. I was just gonna go off of that whole conversation with the fear with well owners, and something that I've seen recently that is really interesting regarding it, that is like, usually you have the fear of, I don't want to know what's going on. I'm concerned with finding out that I have all this contamination, and how that impacts me, but then two, also how that costs me. But one thing that we're also seeing, at least here in Michigan with everything in the news, is when we have my project lead go out and sample homes for just like basic partial chem and things like that, there's the fear of the homeowner asking us, oh, are you sampling for PFAS? And it's because they're so scared that it's actually in their water that they want to know. But then we got to be like, no, that's really expensive. We're not paying for that. I am sorry, but you're getting all these other things, but PFAS, no. And so that's something that we're battling now, is that fear of, is PFAS in my water, rather than fear of, I don't want to know what's in my water.
Yeah, and that also just adds more challenges of, then the question might be why are you not doing that? And sometimes the cost is is definitely the answer, but that also adds a level of frustration too. Like, but that's what I'm concerned about. Why are you not sampling for that? So it's, I think the uncertainty around PFAS and health effects and all of that as we're still developing our knowledge.
Yeah, and then that impacts
as-
resources and whatnot. Like I know some of my partners at the Department of Health here in Michigan said that they had money that could go towards like efforts like ours of just like helping homeowners sample, but now it's all been directed towards communities with PFAS, like the Benton Harbor situation where 100% I agree, you got to redirect your funding and efforts to address that issue there. But at the same time, then that removes opportunities for all other general wellhead protection efforts and water quality efforts.
Well, Lindsay added a great comment here is because we're still using these chemicals. We're still exposed to them on a daily basis. And so this is going to be a conversation we're having for a very long time.
Yeah, especially now that Michigan has recently passed all of their regulations on PFAS. We're also now seeing it with communities being terrified of how their water providers are going to be able to afford sampling for the regulations and things.
Yeah.
If you don't have the chat up, Frida just shared a couple links in there related to their work and the full findings, as well as a summary of it. So thanks. Steve, do you have any questions of where you want to lead the conversation?
Boy, what haven't we talked about? I mean, yeah.
Cindy, go ahead.
What's that?
Oh,
Cindy,
Cindy, raise your hand, so I'll let her jump in.
that sounds great. Thank you, Cindy.
Sure, anytime, Steve. One of the things that came up from a call that I had from a health department just yesterday after we concluded, and this is an issue that has been raised numerous times over many years to me, is one of the things that maybe we also need to advocate for is funding for sealing abandoned wells. Throughout the Midwest here where I'm located, I'm seeing a lot of old homesteads being torn down and being reclaimed for farming. And I'll go by one day and there is the pipe coming out for the casing of the old well. The next day you go by and it's gone, and I'm sure there was no abandonment, no sealing. And so those are direct accesses of contamination to our groundwater resource. There's monies available, at least in Ohio and Indiana, that I've researched for sealing of gas and oil wells, but nothing for water wells. So something that to put on our radar as a group that we need to consider.
I know there's a couple Iowa folks on here, and they have a grants to counties program that allows the counties to help fund sealing wells. And in Illinois, some of our soil and water conservation districts offer cost share for sealing abandoned wells, but it's pretty local based and hodgepodge. I tell people they just need to talk to their local agencies most of the time.
Yeah, Steve, this is Dan Miller.
Yeah.
So the grants to county, it's funded through actually the tax on fertilizer, and it's through the state revolving fund. So that's where the monies come from. So if you want to go to your state people and talk to them about that, possibly they could do the same thing for the Midwest states, because there's a lot of agriculture, and I think they're just looking at, since they're putting down chemicals on the land, why not use that tax money to help out with wells and contamination that can go into old wells.
Yeah, every state needs a grants to counties program, I think. So we established that earlier. So it's awesome.
Well, I think that's a helpful piece of advice, because when you have at least a partial solution or an idea to, okay, so where's the money going to come from? At least you can propose something and start the conversation in a practical way. Lauren?
This was actually something that we talked about in one of the groups. So what's really unique about my situation is my group that I lead is a combination of city planners who communities rely primarily on private wells, but also water providers. And so we talk back and forth between these issues and trying to educate the public on both sides. And one of my members brought up a question of a concern that they're having where there's a loophole in one of their ordinances where if you have a new building go up or you tear down the current one and rebuild, the well needs to be abandoned and you have to be hooked up to water supply. But if it's a current home that's getting like an addition to and they add on the water supply and decide to move away from their well, they still have the ability to keep that well for irrigation purposes. So they're now trying to figure out a way to address that issue because a lot of the time, yeah, they'll use it for the first couple of years, but then they forget about it. And then that record gets lost because it's not currently a drinking well, it's just irrigation only. And so they're trying to find incentives or things to do for that. One discussion was, one community had like a $600 grant, or in this case, they're thinking about $600 off the connection fee to a water supply because it costs about $1,200 to actually abandon the well, to be an incentive towards that. Or they thought, hey, if they're going to keep the irrigation, maybe we need to do some type of contract with that owner where it's an agreement where every 2 years you have to present to the township a record that you had your well inspected by a licensed well driller to allow you to keep having that irrigation well on property. And so that's definitely a conversation we're at least having here in the region, trying to deal with those abandoned wells.
Very cool. Thank you, Lauren. Jesse?
I just wanted to add it in. I think that really ties back into that conversation, not sure we were having earlier or yesterday, but about knowing where the wells are overall. I mean, getting a good location of the wells. If we knew that where the wells were in a region or even in the state, and all the well logs weren't missing and everything was actually put on their map where it was supposed to be, it'd be a whole lot easier for those environmental health professionals in that county to drive by that property and say, hey, stop that dozer. I know that there's a well here, or, those types of things, because, the current state of well logs and knowing where wells are is just one of the biggest issues with any work that I do, to have to go to a well owner and say, I have no idea how your well was constructed. So the best recommendation I can give you is to just keep everything away from it, or, that type of thing. So I really do think that ties back into that, of really a need nationally for us to do something overall about finding all the wells and at least having them documented, so that we know where they're at, so that environmental health professionals in the area can effectively service those wells and those well owners. That's all.
Huge
Yeah.
issue.
What was that, Steve?
Huge issue for sure in every state.
Yeah, it seems like we need to kind of extend the conversation and provide some focus, because we talk about all different topics and you see that through the agenda for this conference. But what if we all kind of tried to focus on specific issues so that we can make progress and share everything we know about those things over time? So lots to think about there. Thanks, Jesse. All righty. Any additional thoughts or questions that maybe you want to pose to the group based on your own experiences, things that you're still not sure about and you'd like to get a bunch of different perspectives on? Kind of you have a captive audience of 24 here.
No doubt.
All right, then. Well, I think we'll adjourn for now and go ahead and get this recording processed. The recording will be just the parts that we were all here together, especially for those of you who are watching the recording. We did cut out all the little sections where people were in breakout groups because they had lots of side conversations, but hopefully we've captured a lot of those thoughts and lessons learned here. Steve wants to say something else before we depart. What is that?
Well, just about this afternoon. So there's
Okay.
there's 3 talks this afternoon. Walt Kelly is head of our groundwater section, and this study they're doing, this lead study, is unique because we always talk about what do you do after you find out you have a problem, right? So they got funding from HUD to sample 150 homes for lead on private wells, basically because we found more than we thought we would. You know, our groundwater isn't that aggressive. pH of most of it's over 7.5. It just doesn't tend to be the kind of water that would leach a lot of lead. But they found a lot more than expected in an earlier study. So the HUD study, they actually have money set aside to either add treatment, replace the well, or actually replace all the pipes in some of the people's homes. And I've not heard of a type of project like that before. And so they haven't done any of the replacement type stuff yet. They're still sampling, but it's a really cool project. And then we've talked a lot about Massachusetts today and their boards of health and the issues there, because every board of health has its own rules related to how they deal with private wells. And there's 350 in a small state, where we in Illinois, we're 5 times the size of Massachusetts, and we only have 87 county health departments. And that's the other talk this afternoon, is about efforts there to both sample and also create legislation that's statewide. So again, my mantra has always been, it should be equal health protection under the law. And so they're trying to do that in Massachusetts now. So I just want to make a plug for this afternoon, because I think they're both going to be pretty interesting. And as well as Joel Pig is one of our partners, he at Texas Extension is going to talk about their program. And they do workshops all over Texas and the efforts they've had there. So that's it. Make it a plug.
All right, great. Thanks for the preview, Steve. We will see you all back on Socio this afternoon. I appreciate you spending time with us on Zoom this morning. Hopefully you learned something new and have some new ideas. So take care and see you soon.
Thanks, everyone.